We've had several classes now, and we try to stay in touch with the people who've gone through them and be able to continue to support them. And one thing that several of them have said is they come back, they're really enthusiastic, they've got some of the best tools that we've ever had to work with families, and they're showing them, they're talking about the techniques, and they kind of get met with just, nope, we don't do that here, or that's never going to work. They get really kind of shot down by someone they look up to. It could be a seasoned staff or someone working with them as a mentor or leadership. Just what would you say to that type of resistance when someone comes back and they're really jazzed? What would be your advice?
I think it's always hard in an organization of our size when we're trying to make a big, what I would say, philosophical, cultural, and process change. I mean, all three wrapped up into one, right? And I think that the training that especially we've just launched is really cutting edge methods about how we work with families. And not everyone has had the opportunity to be exposed to as much of that as we would like. And so, I think it's assuming good intent for the people who are maybe not as enthusiastic as the trainee who's just returned to the office. I think it's maybe asking the trainee how comfortable they are with the 5 operating principles of self-sufficiency and the self-sufficiency mission, and maybe even asking how willing they would be to being a champion for, this really is a way that we can work with families differently that kind of get at, the future of self-sufficiency and the way that we want to engage with families, right?
Yeah.
I also think it's about practicing something that's new and showing your peers or your leaders that it can work. I think that that's something that's important. Some people you are really open to telling them a new method, and some people need to be shown. I'm personally a show me method kind of girl, so I can relate to that.
And then, another piece to it that sometimes comes into play, and that was so helpful to hear, is just the different kind of models that are out there for how we meet with people or meet with families. And so, what would you say to those that kind of think, a lot of this relationship building and this takes a lot of time that I just don't have, or they feel their local area's model isn't flexible enough. They have a hard time marrying the two. What would you say to that?
You know, um, I think that I think that we have 3 key responsibilities to Oregonians, and the 3 key things are that we have to have a good safety net for families experiencing a crisis. We have to help with family stability when someone has experienced a crisis and they're trying to stabilize their family so that they can, move on. And then I think we have to, really figure out how to connect them to that pathway out of poverty, and that's usually through connecting them to a career path of some sort. And and so when we think about that safety net is really where some of the models have come in, because we have to be really efficient at doing that because we see a lot of people. And I remember before we implemented the models, we had offices that, some were, maybe scheduling people that were hungry 5 days out. Other places were scheduling them 3 weeks out. Other places 3 months out. And so we have to be thoughtful about all of the work that we do, and we have to be really efficient at delivering the services, really for 2 reasons. The one I just mentioned, which is, because that's what families need and we need to be responsive. But number 2 is that we really found that the overall workload went down if we were being more responsive to that delivery of benefits and that safety net, because then people were not coming into the office continuing to ask about their benefits. They weren't calling to ask, and all of that added work. So it really was investing that time savings efficiency into working with people, which gets us to that helping them stabilize and helping to connect them to the career. So they all have to work together. The models shouldn't dictate how we engage people.
Mm.
It's just the structure around
Mm.
how we operate our business, because again, we operate a very large business, so we have to kind of have that structure to make it as streamlined as possible.
Sounds like we really can do both.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do both. And again, it's thinking about why we do those things, you know, so your your efficiency doesn't outweigh your engagement with families. Your efficiency allows you to engage with families. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to do both.
Mm. Another kind of thing that we've heard is there might be a mentality out there, or feedback we've gotten is that this is out there, is that once somebody is off of TANF, or it looks like they're transitioning off, that the program piece is done, and so therefore our relationship with you, or that connection, or my ability to support you after, is gone as well. What would you say? What does that look like in our new way of approaching families?
I think in our old way of approaching families, which was very driven by the individual programs such as TANF, I think that that would have been true. You know, really, our goal here is to help families move out of poverty, and that's probably going to be a long term effort, or and in some ways a long term engagement. You know, with our organization. And so when they move from one program to another, shouldn't mean that our relationship with them stops. We may not be able to invest the same kind of monetary support that we've offered, but I think that people often mistake our biggest resource in self sufficiency as being the money that we can help families with, but it's really not. It's the people, because it's that relationship again, because as a family coach, you might be the only person in their life who really believes that they can do it. And that means way more than money to anyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
You may be the only person who will problem solve with them, who will be their cheerleader, who will help them over a hurdle. Those are the kinds of things we really want to make sure that the family coach in our offices are able to provide for people when they're making those really hard transitions in their life. I mean, if any of us think about, you know, the first time we went to work, or maybe any time we've gone to work after a long, you know, spell of not working, it's really challenging, right? And think about juggling a family and kids and homework and school lunches and, you know, transportation if you don't have a car. With all of those things, it's incredibly challenging. So absolutely, that relationship doesn't stop.
Thanks, Kim, for sitting down and allowing me to kind of ask you these questions. I know we talked a lot of details, and so I'm wondering what would be the main thing that you'd want somebody having watched this to take away?
I think the main thing is that what we do, what we're about, is actually helping families leave poverty forever, hopefully, right? And in order to do that, people have to be willing to change their life, and that's a really scary thing. And when we talk about engaging a family, that means engaging a family into activities that are meaningful for them, so that they can meet the goals that they have for their life. It's not about passing a TANF audit. That's not why we engage families, right? If we think we're going to help people change their life, we have to really connect with them honestly and openly, and listen, because it really is their life.